And welcome back to Kivumbi 2017. Just to bring you up to speed with a new development. We understand that IEBC, according to their Twitter handle, they said that they have already complied with the court ruling yesterday in regards to granting access to the NASA lawyers so that they can be able to scrutinize and audit the servers, among other poll material. Remember that early today, in the wee hours of the morning, Paul Mwangi, who is one of the lawyers representing NASA, tweeted that they had not been given that access by IEBC as per the court ruling yesterday. In a tweet, he said at IEBC, we've been stonewalled, no read-only access. They want to give already printed logs. It's back to court in the morning, so therefore they were going to court. But we understand that so far IEBC has complied with that ruling. And I just want to get the views of my guests. How come IEBC took so long to, grant or to give whatever was needed to NASA?
Betty, I have always been of this opinion that IEBC should actually be as open as possible to either of these parties or either of these contestants. And the reason being is that IEBC is it's inherently transparent, neutral, and it does not favor any person. But any acts from the IEBC that try to negate that particular fact actually gives and raises suspicion, which suspicion is quite unnecessary. You do not actually even need to go to court to actually get the orders that NASA got, because that is something that they could have just facilitated in the spirit of openness and transparency.
All right.
And transparency is a key pillar in any democratic elections in any country.
All right.
So that even if they decide that they've granted access at this particular hour, the question will be, why couldn't they have granted access yesterday when it was very clear that the orders were given in the morning? They say they'll be ready by 4, which still raises cast aspersions, because the court, when giving the deadline for today at 5:30, had already factored in this time based on the request by NASA.
Yes.
But if they already said by 4:30 and NASA was ready to go in at 4:30, from 4:30 to today morning, they've been kept there. That is frustrating that court order by itself. And it doesn't matter whether you have complied at this particular point. And even that compliance is word coming from IEBC.
From IEBC.
We have not had the other side.
Yes.
But more importantly, you should notice that that access was not only granted to NASA, the petitioners. Yes. It was also granted to the third respondent, that is the president himself. Yeah. So that it was an open process.
Right.
So that IEBC has no reason whatsoever to fear granting this particular access, especially when there's an order from the highest court on the land.
All right. Murigi, should we read anything into this? The fact that they've taken, quite a bit of time to comply, does it mean that there's anything wrong with that process?
Can I say this? Yeah. The information that we have is based on 2 tweets. One by Paul Mwangi and the other one by IEBC. And each party is advocating its position. Paul Mwangi says that NASA and the party, because we haven't had any other party complaining apart from NASA saying that they've not been given access to the IEBC server. And then so you have IEBC now responding and saying that they've given them access. You do not know, they did not specify when they gave them access to the IEBC servers. But what I'm saying is, yesterday you realized there was confusion. Immediately that ruling was read. It was a 45-page ruling. And I remember you have a liturgy of almost 20 orders that were given. If you look at the list of what is supposed to be granted. But what the first thing that the court said was, it's a read-only access and copying, if necessary, of all that. So you had a situation where some of those documents, for example, logs, were to be granted in terms of copies and in soft copy. So at times you will always get that there is and also the composition of the team that was to access the server. Each party was allowed 2 agents or specialists. That is all the parties that were involved. That is NASA 2, not IEBC, President Uhuru Kenyatta 2. So you'd have 4, and then you'd also have 2 ICT officers appointed by the court, and then the supervisor would be the registrar of the Supreme Court. So what I think and what happened is you'll always have parties, and all parties having their different positions. But ultimately what you have, this is a process that is supervised by court. that the final word will come from the registrar herself and saying whether there was compliance or there was non-compliance. I wouldn't read too much into it at the same time, because every party tries to put out their own line of argument, and everybody would read anything to it. But we have to wait until we get the report from the registrar herself and the 2 ICT officers on how the process was conducted.
All right. In case NASA goes, and forwards this matter, before the judges, are they likely to get more time? Because also time to look into all this information. I mean, it's quite a lot. Yes. Will they be granted some more time, considering in case IEBC did this with delay?
From what we are getting is that NASA is actually in the process of filing a contempt of court application, and that is where I'm saying it is not right for my learned colleague to just dismiss those assertions like that, because there was an issue of time, like you rightly say. Even if they go back to court, they will actually seek additional time. There is a reason that that time was sought, and more importantly, the caginess that the IEBC has can only raise suspicion as against themselves. If there were any issues, they would have actually discussed it openly, and you wouldn't see that particular tweet from a senior advocate like Paul Mwangi. Neither will you see that tweet today that IEBC has sent, saying that now we are in compliance, and the scrutiny is going on. They have not spoken about when they actually complied, because the compliance may have started this morning. What explanation do you have in terms of what happened from yesterday at 4:30? I can understand they may have taken a good part of the day to understand that particular decision, but even as they were understanding, compliance like provision of logs and all that, which were to be provided, should have been ongoing, so that limited access on the read-only part should have taken place maybe through the night, because remember, today that information should be brought in a synthesizable way back to the court, and the parties must actually submit on those on this report, so that even if this report comes in late in the late hour, these parties will not even have had a chance to actually comprehend it. And therefore, my take is that IEBC, regardless of that, if it comes out that they took this time, and they've not even come out to explain why they didn't give access, if it comes out from the registrar, it will actually just send a semblance of suspicion, which is of no good value. Secondly, Betty, you must notice that you cannot say that any other party has not complained. Whose application was it? It was NASA's application. So what the other side was comfortable, they didn't actually want. In fact, they were basing the arguments that there is no need to actually access. So they may not complain. But the moment IEBC opposed that application, that is where the suspicion starts, and the actions that they've done compounds that suspicion, which is not good for an independent electoral body, because that independent, with a capital I, there's a question mark immediately after it.
Betty, 2 issues. One, Paul Mwangi is not new to that kind of sensationalism. You remember last Sunday? Yes, it is. I would call it that. You remember last Sunday when the petition and the documents were supposed to be served on the IEBC. And I remember it was so clear the service had not been done on the IEBC or any of the parties. And I remember Paul Mwangi was the first person to go on Twitter and say that the documents had been served, only for it to emerge that later on the documents were to be served. IEBC lawyers had to go to the Supreme Court and avail themselves at the Supreme Court on Sunday evening for purposes of that service. So for me, I will say one thing. It is coming for a person, an interested party. Paul Mwangi is the NASA's lawyer. And if you look at even the time of that tweet that was sent, last night, I remember at around 11, I don't know whether it was transmitted on KTN or which other station, there were reports that the scrutiny is ongoing at Milimani. That was last night. So it emerges later on, and I remember I saw this at around 3 a.m. and actually saw it on Facebook, and from colleagues whom I know support NASA are the ones who are claiming that NASA has been denied access to the servers. For me, that's the reason why I'm saying I wouldn't read it too much into that.
From both sides?
From both sides. IEBC or, yes, from IEBC or either other one. And it is expected that for the purposes of the response, it cannot be said that simply because IEBC has responded 1 hour ago, they have granted access 1 hour ago. What I expect, if indeed the petition, the application for contempt had been filed, I know proceedings would be, there would be some form of proceedings, even in chambers that would be ongoing. But what I'm saying, let's wait. By the time it's how many minutes? We are around 45 minutes to the start of the other session today, and I believe that that is an issue that is going to be raised. But yes, there was the issue about time.
Yes.
If you want to address time, this court has expressed itself that it wanted 2 clear days for it to complete all these matters, and that's the reason why they said by the time we allocate the submissions, the highlighting of submissions. Today we have that respondent and the amicus and the interested party, that is Professor Wainaina, and the amicus are going to present their submissions. So that would be a total of let's say 3 hours plus. No, 4 hours, because the others have 20 minutes each, so that's another full hour. So you have 3 hours for these proceedings, and then NASA has 1 hour to respond.
Yeah.
So you would expect that there would be a break, and we expect for that report, so that later on, once both parties have the report and have requested themselves the report, then they would submit on that report. So my thinking is that the court has set its timeline, and this was a fact that was reiterated by the Deputy Chief Justice.
Yes.
I remember when there was a suggestion by the Attorney General about the hearings that they would take 2 days. So what I think is that they need time. They want to give the SEMS enough time for them to consider all the evidence. At the same time, let me also let me finish. Yes, at the same time, the court will not hesitate to make reference to that report that is going